Hello folks, I'm Ben Stevens with Stevens Family Outdoors.
And I'm Sammy Stevens.
Today we're going to show you the wonderful Mountain State game calls. I'm using the 4-reed call.
And I happen to be using the 3-reed.
We're going to show you a couple basic calls that you can do with this. We're going to start out with Sam over here, going to give us the spring yelp. Now I'm going to do the same yelp to show the difference in the calls. As you can hear, mine's a little bit raspier than his. But the good thing about that is it's always nice to have different mouth calls to switch up to. More raspy, not quite raspy, no switching mouth calls right now.
My bad, man.
But it's always good to do that. Now we're going to have JW come in here and give us some of his experience. He's got nearly, what is it, 40 years?
40 or so.
40 or so years. I'm about 20 years. So give us a little story on a turkey that's hung up out there. JW taught most of his children. Not all of us have figured this out, but most of us that overcalling a turkey is not a good thing. Sometimes just a couple purrs, maybe a few soft yelps, and sit for 45 minutes or an hour if you have to on an old educated turkey. Share that with us a little bit on some of that.
Well, the old timers had it down pat when they would, a lot of times all they would do was go in the woods. If they knew that that gobbler was there and he was hard to get in, and a lot of hunters go out and try to call him in and had no success, well, he would know what he'd need to do is just go out in the general area there, give one cluck and put the call away and sit there 45 minutes, an hour, and in would come most of the time that mature gobbler.
Well, I tell you, what do you want to say to those people that when you go out there and you know there's a turkey in the area like you say, but if they give that one cluck, they let those mind games start rolling that, hey, he may have not heard, he might have been scratching, or he might not have been in earshot yet. 45 minutes, 20 minutes later, you're like, I better do it again. What do you want to say to those people to let them know how well a turkey's hearing is?
Well, start off with, a hunter's imagination is his worst enemy.
Yeah.
It's always better at the next spot. I said all that to say this, that not only is their eyesight extremely well, but their hearing also. I believe a bird can be hundreds of yards away, and you give that call and he can pinpoint you within, this is my opinion, within 50-foot circle that he knows where you're at. So hearing, a bird hearing your call is not going to be the problem unless it's windy or something like that. We're talking on an average day, but turkeys hearing is extraordinary.
Yeah, you know, yeah. Thankfully, the good Lord gave the turkey the good eyesight, gave him the hearing, but the sense of smell is lacking in that department. But I've found that it's as funny as this sounds, it's still important to try to. You can't watch your wind, but it would be nice maybe to spray down still, just for the simple fact of that many times I've seen deer come through and turkey right behind them, and that's. The turkey are smart enough to know I can see and I can hear, but the deer can smell. So if the deer aren't spooked, that's good. It's a good thing, and vice versa. Sometimes deer will follow turkey when you're hunting whitetail hunting. You want to make sure that you do not spook the turkey. Have you had that happen to you very much?
Absolutely. What we have to understand is that the turkey and the deer are companions. They look out one for another, right? Or should I say that they use the other's abilities to their advantage. And I've noticed that. So scent control should not totally be cast out. You should consider that, because if you've got a turkey coming in and a deer smells you and blows, you're out of luck.
Yeah, I know many times we've been hunting together or by ourselves, and we got a turkey that's just red hot, and the deer's come up, and the deer's either seen us because we moved to get prepared for the turkey, or the deer smelled us over the hill. When a deer snorts, the turkey shuts up, and you're like, what happened? Well, he knows when that deer spooked that something's not right. What would you say to the hunters that say first light off the roost is best, which if you get a real hot bird, it's usually the best if you can get on him right off the tree? But what would you say to those hunters that after about 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, they kind of give up and say the day's gone, turkeys are with hens for the day?
Well, I would say you're misinformed, because I think around 9, possibly 10 o'clock, the turkeys are finished with the hens and are looking for another hen, and they're just as excited to be with the second or third hen as they were the first one of the day.
Yeah, I remember this year, I don't know if we've put it out yet, that turkey hunt I self-videoed in the rain. I don't know if that's out yet.
It's out.
It's out.
On YouTube.
On YouTube, Stephen's Family Outdoors, that you can find it there. Look for Ben's Turkey Hunt.
It's right there. It's got a few less likes than my bow hunt, turkey hunting.
But that hunt there was, I went hunting that morning and heard maybe 1 or 2 birds a few times. The rain let up, and as soon as I got out of the truck at this spot, it was 10:30. Turkeys were gobbling. I got him late morning. I've killed most of my turkeys late morning versus early. Sam, you have any thoughts or any questions over there?
Oh yeah, I think something that a couple of the viewers might actually like to find out is when it comes down to identifying the turkey, like jakes versus adult gobblers, identifying from long range. How is that something you guys could give a little advice to shed some light on that?
Well, something I'll say my thoughts. One way to do it is when a jake comes in, most of the time a big mature gobbler, he's going to be excited, as the jake is too, but he's going to have like a big blue head coming in. And the jake is going to come in and he's going to have more of a red head. And that's what if you can't see, first of all, you should never shoot, even if you identify it's a turkey, until you can identify the beard. Is it a jake? Is it a gobbler? And their fan. Anytime they fan up a jake or a young turkey, they're going to have an uneven fan. It's going to be shorter, and then it's going to go up for a couple feathers and come up. That's just one of the traits, but tell us how the tom carries himself a little different as approaching versus that jake.
The mature gobbler?
Yeah.
Caution, I think, probably is one of the best aspects to look for there, other than the beard or the fan feathers. The fan feathers are a dead giveaway between a juvenile bird and a mature gobbler. But usually when you have multiple turkeys coming in, usually the one furthest back is the biggest bird, the oldest bird. And that's because they learn over the years that they survive to hang back and let the dumb ones, if you will, go up front. And if nothing happens, guess what? You must be safe.
Yeah, there's been many of birds when they used to get that wise. I would say sometimes it's because you get them in close, you roll them, you don't get them, and they take off. I remember that one hunt years ago. We were hunting, the 4 of us up there at our property, and we were calling these 2 birds that were gobbling. They were way off, and we were just sitting there enjoying the beautiful spring morning. Next thing you know, Dad says, "Turkey, turkey right here." And we're all sitting there and we're being still, but we're not being as still as you need to be when the turkeys are close. The turkeys were a good 150, 200 yards away at least still, the gobblers, the ones that were the gobbling.
When they gobbled.
When they gobbled, they were. Well, they're out there gobbling still, and Dad's like, "Turkey, turkey," and we turn and look because we were looking towards this way, and the decoy was over here, and there was a big mature tom that Dad ended up harvesting, strutting right around the decoy. So that'll go to show you, some days they'll just come in and they don't even pay attention, and other days you can't get them to come in worth anything.
Well, on another note, another thing that you might want to remember is if there's multiple hunters sitting waiting on the same turkey, you're hunting together, of course, and one comes in and one of the hunters harvests that bird, sit tight just sit tight for another few minutes, 5-10 minutes, because if you remember that one,
you shot him and we waited, and then two
Yep.
more came in and I shot an adult tom.
yes.
Tell the folks real quick, you've had more experience than we've had for sure on getting turkeys in. I remember one time I was calling and I had 3 different turkeys gobbling, and I went to set up. It was just breaking day. Put my decoy out, and by the time I walked to the tree, I heard the beating of wings, and I turned around, and I wasn't even sitting, and it was an adult turkey strutting around the decoy. And I sit there for a little bit. When I finally sat down, I got up and was going to walk up the hill because this turkey was an adult, but his beard was burned off from the ice and stuff. And when I got up, he ran about 50 to 60 yards, and he strutted and he gobbled the whole time and didn't quit all morning. What makes a turkey one day just be like they're on guard? They'll spook from a mile away if they've seen something, but other days the occasional day they'll just sit there and gobble. And are they identifying you as a human, or are they just so in need for a lady?
I don't think that a turkey necessarily is smart. I think cautious is the word. Very alert, but probably the turkey's personality or the way they act on a certain day a lot of times depends on the weather. I found out that on drizzly days they tend to be oblivious that you're even in the woods a lot of times. They just act so dumb. I remember last year that your brother Luke and I were hunting, and we heard these turkeys gobbling, so we set up on them, and we had to set up quick. And our back was up against some trees about that big around.
Much smaller than you, yeah.
Yeah. And it ended up that we finally saw these red heads coming in, and this is why you don't shoot at a red head only. You wait till you either see the fan or, more importantly, the beard. It ended up that they were 4 jakes, juvenile birds, and they came in, and they come in so close to us that they kept gobbling, I would say 15 yards, just gobbling, just walking back and forth. And finally they start walking away, and they got about 20 yards, 30 yards out, and we said, let's go, let's get up and go somewhere else. So we got up, got our gear together, and the turkeys were still out there 30 yards looking at us gobbling. So you never know how a turkey's going to act from one day to the next.
Yeah, 2 more questions here. I know people ask these questions a lot. We're trying to answer as many questions as you all may want to know, or you all may ask. Get as many of them out of the way for you, and hopefully it's helpful. 1 question for Sam and 1 more for JW. I'll go to JW here, speaking of jakes. Tell the folks how you might, the little clues you might be able to get into before you even see the turkey to identify that you're trying to call in a jake. If it's a jake, I mean, obviously he comes in quicker, but before he comes in, what's the determining factor that you know, hey, that's a jake or that's a longbeard?
Well, you have to remember that nothing is 100% sure, but as a standing rule, the jake's gobble is shorter than a mature and higher pitched. But like I said, it's not always that is the case. I've heard some pretty deep long gobbles, and they would come in, it would be a jake. But as a standing rule, that would probably be my #1 factor.
Yeah, the jake is obviously doesn't sound like this, but he's kind of like a ow! He's really short. And the longbeard is going to be more of the like the. I remember I shot one year. Speaking of that rare occasion, he was gobbling, and we were hunting this ridge, and every time he'd gobble, we'd always go the other way. We'd be like, yeah, that's a jake, that's a jake. So we never chased him. One day he was the only one gobbling, and when he gobbled, he was just like, ow! He sounded horrible, but we thought we had no other choice. We called that bird up, and he ended up having a 13.5-inch beard on him, and he just must have been an old bird that was had it out or whatever. But he had a very bad gobble. Sam, the question for you. People say it's some hunters say that it's impossible to call a longbeard away from his hens when he does have a flock of hens with him. Last year, you and I were on a hunt, 2 years ago actually, that we ended up seeing this turkey, and he wasn't gobbling it when we seen him because he had the hens occupying him. But we hurry up and set up, and tell the folks what happened there on that hunt with the gobbler with hens.
Well, so basically, we've covered a lot of topics this evening, but one that we haven't touched on yet is called float calling. Float calling is where you initially get set up, and if the bird is not responding or not coming towards a location that you're set up already, if you have two-man, obviously you have a two-man situation, you have one man set up and the caller starts to go back further yardage, 30 yards, 50 yards, back and start doing float calling, getting further away from the bird, which then makes him really want to leave the flock of hens, or if he has none, the actual strutting area he's in. But actually, Ben was my caller that day, and it ended up being a pretty nice setup. We had a chance to set up at the edge of a field about 20 yards into the woods, and the turkey would just not come across, wouldn't break over the field line. It was probably about a 150-yard field, and the turkey and the bird wouldn't leave the woods on the other side of the field. So Ben went up behind us about 30 yards, 40 yards, and did some float calling, and after probably about 5 or 6 minutes from the first time he called, we noticed the bird was gobbling a good 50 yards closer. So so with that, Ben kind of quieted down a little bit, and then he snuck back up to the position behind me where he manned the camera. And luckily for us, we had a chance to get good footage of the bird coming across the field. Something crucial about float calling is once you start float calling and moving back a bit, you want to become as quiet as possible after that. Like I said, you don't want to overcall because you don't want the bird to think you're actually going back in their general direction, because as Pop said before, turkeys aren't normally smart, but if they think they're going to get out of the less amount of work as possible, they're going to sit and wait.
That's exactly right, Sam. I remember several turkeys that I call them hung up. If they're 45 minutes and I'm calling at them and they're not budging, I call that a bird that's hung up for some reason.
Could be on a strut path out there, back and forth.
Probably is. Yeah, you can hear him going back and forth. But here's a little trick that I use, and I've used with great success several times, is when he's on his farthest end of his strutting path, I'll get up and walk away from him. Of course, he can't see me. Get up and walk away and cut and cackle, walking away from him, say 20 or 30 yards, and stop and hurry up and run back to my original seat and sit down and shut up.
Yeah, no calls. Yeah.
No call, because you have to make him think I'm leaving, and that a lot of times will just break their nerve. Like, how dare you? You know what I'm saying? And they come and stick their head up over the hill there and strut and looking around for you, and you go home with turkey dinner.
Yeah.
Hey Ben, I had a question for you. Birds that have been hunter educated, that have unfortunately, like say, came up on somebody out in the woods, they caught movement, something or other that led to like a progressive style of calling. What would you do on a bird that is what we consider as hunter educated?
There's several different ways that a bird can be hunter educated. One of the ways is when hunters sit and they call and the turkey's gobbling, he stops gobbling, they get up to leave because he stopped gobbling, and they spotted him.
Yep.
And they're like, that's a big no-no. Other ways of hunter educated are when people, it's people that aren't real skilled at the calling method, and they're sitting out there and they sound more like a woodpecker than a turkey, and the turkeys, are educated. But the biggest reason is because they've been called in and they've gotten rolled, they've gotten severely spooked, and there's no coming in. So a quick story on that to make for illustration reasons. We had this turkey that we remember over at, we call it the Big Ridge where we hunt. He would not come in for anybody. And one afternoon I went over with the thought in mind. I knew his pattern. He'd fly down and he'd strut this ridge, and in the afternoon he'd come across. So I was over there right about the time I knew he'd be coming across, and he was over here. He was just a gobbling to the left. I got my gear and I hurried up to the top log and road he comes strutting through. Never made a call. That's the important thing. You don't call. If I would have called, I guarantee you that turkey would have turned around and went back the other way, or came down the ridge or over the ridge. He wouldn't have stayed on the path. He would have avoided me. I sat there. It took about 45 minutes to an hour. Next thing I know, and he's gobbling, shot gobbling. He was hot. He was shot gobbling at crows, jets. He came within 30 yards of me, and I harvested him. I would not have harvested him if I, being he was so educated, if I would have called. Sometimes when you're doing that, it's just leave your turkey calls, slate call, box calls, mouth calls, whatever you have. Just leave it in the truck, because like we talked about earlier, the human mind plays the biggest tricks on you. That, oh, he's coming. Let me entice him with a quick call, and that's the ruination of it. So I hope you folks enjoyed this little bit here. What we'd like for you to do, if you could, is maybe leave some comments. If there's anything you'd like to hear about the sport of turkey hunting. We know turkey season's just around, it's under a month away, isn't it? It comes in April
16th.
April 16th, so it's a month away today.
It's in West Virginia.
Yeah, a month away today in West Virginia, so we're gearing up. So if you have any questions, if you have a turkey you're trying to hunt, or maybe how to locate or pattern a turkey,
ask a question.
just ask a question in there and we'll be happy to answer it for you.
Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and give us a thumbs up.
Absolutely. Like, subscribe, and just while we're on here real quick, just wanted to give a quick shout out to our newest sponsor, Mountain State Game Calls. You can visit them at www.mountainstategamecalls.com.
Deer season is not that far around the corner if you think about it. Fall will be here before you know it. We'd like to thank Muddy Outdoors for their sponsorship as well.
And don't forget about Smoking Musket Outdoors for all your hunting and bow hunting and gun hunting needs, and trapping needs also. And don't forget, trapping season is right around the corner also, not too far off. And don't forget to shop trapleggets.com.
Boy, it sounds like the time of year that we all love here. It's hunting season after hunting season.
Yep.
God bless and take care. You're watching Stephen's Family Outdoors. Thanks for watching.